Hello. Today on this video I thought about reviewing my current experience with the Huawei Watch GT2. Um, I think that this smartwatch is quite interesting in many respects. It has some strong points and some weak points, and I hope I will cover part of them along the video. But first of all, let me tell you just a brief about this product. Um, this smartwatch has a diameter of 46 millimeters. It's not very large, it's not very small. There have been larger watches being released on the market as well as smaller ones. I think it mostly caters to the male audience due to or the men audience due to the way in which the clock is being designed. You can see all those visible knobs and the outer ring of the clock has a certain look to it, so I think it caters more to men than women, but this is not a problem ultimately, because just about any watch has its own public, and I'm pretty sure that someone that would want to have an Apple Watch would have an Apple Watch regardless of the design. Just as well as someone who would search for a cheaper device would probably settle on something released by a specific manufacturer, or if they have a preference, then again this is what they will do. Of course, the watch comes in different colors: matte black, sunset orange, pebble brown, titanium gray. The display is quite interesting. It's an AMOLED screen. It's a 1.49 inch AMOLED screen. The resolution is not very high. It's 454 by 454. It has touchscreen, obviously, it's a smartwatch, and it also supports touch gestures. The watch has Bluetooth 5.1, so it's quite recent in terms of hardware. It has an accelerometer sensor, a gyroscope, geomagnetic, optical heart rate, which could be very interesting to some, ambient light sensor, air pressure sensor, and capacitive sensor. The capacitive sensor in this case, I think it is mostly well suited to detect stress, probably. I don't think about any other kind of application. And you can expect this watch to has an estimated battery life of around 14 days. But all right, let's move on and see what we are having over here, because I'm pretty sure you are quite anxious to see. Alright, so this is the typical box. It looks quite nice. I have already configured the watch and used it for a while, so it's not a problem to make it be very well configured, or at least as configured as I consider it to be fit. I will also show you how the application, the health application from Huawei looks. It's something along the lines. You can see, first of all, the exercise part. You can see the exercise statistics, actually. You can have more information about your status if you are logged in, and I will show you immediately just about what you can see. Let me see if it's working or not. Alright, for the moment probably is not taking input. But anyway, you have this category: exercise record, health, living, which probably offers some sort of suggestions. I never use this feature. The heart rate monitoring, which is useful when we are doing some intense activity. Weight monitoring, of course, if you're going to place all the necessary data in order for the program to calculate what is required. It can monitor sleep, of course. It monitors mostly vibration, and in this case, probably it can assume when you were asleep. Monitoring stress level, probably with the capacitive monitor, and monitor also the oxygen saturation. This is quite an important measurement because lower oxygen saturation than typically 95 could point at some imminent health problems. The oxygen saturation has also been presented as one of the symptoms, well, actually lower than the typical oxygen saturation as a symptom of impeding human malware. You know what kind of disease we are talking about, the one that we had for over 2 years. So monitoring this information could also bring you some sort of information related to how well your lungs and heart operate, and this is done due to the infrared sensors and the associated software that interprets the data. All right. Don't know exactly why logging is not working. I will just try to see if I can solve it. Just a moment. Yes, I'm not quite sure why it's not working, even if the clock is being connected. Anyway, it's not that important. It's your typical health monitoring application. It doesn't have anything else to be particularly concerned of. This is a part of what I think is more interesting. It can also show how your battery current charging state, your current battery charging state. You can change watch faces, and there are a couple of them you can choose from. Some of them are better looking, some of them are worse looking. It doesn't matter too much. I will show you some faces I already downloaded and present to you the ups and downs of each choice. Yes, I don't quite understand why logging is required, because I have previously logged in through this application. Anyway, all right, it doesn't matter too much. Let me show you the watch itself. So, first of all, you may be interested to find out how good the product feels. Well, I think it's quite nice. The rubber band is quite durable. It's quite comfortable in a sense. Unfortunately, despite the fact that they mention a weight of around 14 grams, the watch feels quite heavy on the hand. So if you have lighter hands, or you don't like very heavy objects on your hand, you're not going to enjoy this watch. Another problem with the watch I have noticed is the fact that due to its thickness, it can be quite cumbersome to use to put on certain clothes that have narrower sides, narrower arms, because the clock could get stuck, or could glide very difficult, with a lot of difficulty, up until you reach your hand through the arms of the shirt, or your jacket. So I don't have a very good opinion about this. It's one of the most important annoyances I have observed I have noticed with this watch. You can expect this problem actually has been quite common even with classical watches, so it's not something about this particular smartwatch hmm, in question. But I think it is something that you have to keep in mind. It's not a watch that can be very comfortable in some settings. All right, let me tell you something about the clock faces. Just a moment, sorry. I have to turn on the. All right, to turn on the watch again. So just a moment. Unfortunately, another thing I haven't quite understood is the fact that you cannot change the setting for the timeout on the screen. This value seems to be hard coded, and I don't quite agree with this, because there are many instances where you would want to see the clock face a specific amount of time, and then you would have to again make a movement or something like that in order to trigger again the display. How smooth the watch operation feels, it's quite acceptable, not necessarily up to the level I see in, or I saw even on some older devices, on some older smartphones, for instance, ones that were released around 2018. So I don't think that the hardware used in this clock is particularly fast or particularly well suited. From my experience, the autonomy of the watch is relatively acceptable. I think after some use, and depends on your situation, it can clearly drop to around 10 days. I think it's not bad in itself. Unfortunately, there are other things that I have noticed as being a nuisance in operation. Anyway, the first screen you have noticed, you can have the current weather, current day, information pertaining to your current physical activity, the distance you traveled, time that is also present. It is also presented in a digital form. I don't quite think that would be great, but all clock faces do that. So if you want to have an authentic analog feel to it, you cannot. What else can I say? Of course, you can configure how much, how different the clock face is. Unfortunately, you don't have very many choices. Some of them are even paid, but it seems kind of odd when you consider the watch faces being roughly the same, whether they are free or whether they are paid. But this is the manufacturer's perception on marketing, their choice, not mine. All right, the next screen shows your activity split between different types. I think that one of them can be free movement. I don't remember exactly. I haven't quite used it. The last one, of course, it's for how much steps you made, the amount of time you spent on activity. Then you can see the current playlist. You can control your audio and playback. You can even change the volume over here. It's nothing special, just about most watches do this for many years. And of course, you have other screens that that offer details regarding your stress level, the weather forecast, your current pulse, and then you are back to the normal screen. This is the clock face I used. I think it's quite alright. I will show you other clock faces I attempted to use. This one was another one. It looks quite stylish, but again, you also see the digital time. So if you want the analog feel, you're not going to have it over here. This is another one. Again, it may cater to I don't know, teenagers, perhaps better. For me, it's not as stylish. A quite interesting clock face I found, one of the more stylish ones. Not bad. Again, I think the only nuisance is the digital clock. Again, another similar one with a more restrained style. This one, as it seems, it doesn't have a digital time. Unfortunately, there are other information, there are other details that are not shown in this clock face, like, I don't know, the weather, and let me see if I have other clock faces. Yes, this was another one. To me, it seems overly complex and not quite clean. I don't quite enjoy it, but perhaps for a person that is sportier, that one would be better. So let me show them again. This one doesn't look like a clock face at all. It's mostly pointless. I don't know if this one, yes, this one is again one for probably smaller children. One other typical clock face, not particularly attractive. Again, you can roughly guess at what, let's say, the styling that you can expect on such a device. Again, one that caters more, I don't know, to the early 90s, when there were many clocks, digital clocks that had such a convoluted screen. Sleeker one, I don't quite get why you should have the compass over here. Yes, for me it doesn't seem as nice. Another one, you can roughly guess at all the, let's say, options you have. I will get back to some of them that I thought were quite nice. These I have downloaded before. You can check them on the shop. You can find them very easily. This one was not necessarily a favorite of mine, but some people liked it. I just used it as a test. Sorry. This one, that was typically what you saw when we started this video. Overall, what can I say about the clock? It's certainly not a bad clock. Unfortunately, there are some issues I have, and the most important one and the most annoying one, I think, was the fact that when you used also Bluetooth headsets along with the watch, of course, you can also see notifications. When you're watching or I don't know, you're working with your phone and you are having your earphones used also as an audio device and as a microphone. The moment when you receive a phone call, the clock can be used to answer it, which is very nice. Unfortunately, the moment you're going to answer it, the microphone in the clock is going to be active, which is annoying because sometimes you may have headsets that are very good, and in that case they pick audio better than one that is on your hand, and not necessarily you were expecting your hand to be the place where someone can listen to your conversation. And the nuisance of having to lift your hand just to get closer to your mouth in order to have the best audio quality, I don't think it's the best situation. And unfortunately, I have found no way to change the setting in the application or on the clock itself. So it's annoying. Another aspect is that if you have your phone and your phone has Bluetooth turned on, the battery on the clock's battery is going to be drained much faster. The clock is not the clock software actually doesn't make any sort of let's say precautions about how it handles power savings, and this means that your autonomy is going to be seriously lower, just because the clock operates that way, and you cannot change that much. And also your phone's battery is going to get lower a bit faster because of the communication between the clock and the phone, that seems to be less event driven and more polled, which means that it happens constantly at a certain rate, and you cannot have any sort of micromanagement in order to achieve what you want. So I think this is a major nuisance. The second major one I have noticed. Let me also show you what other accessories you have. There aren't very many. You have your typical power cable. This is the charging stand. It's your typical USB-C to this pin connector. It's looking quite alright. The clock is going to self-center itself when it stays on the stand. Unfortunately, I still find that sometimes the contact is not as easily made as possible. First of all, due to the clock's shape, which I don't think it lends perfectly to this application, but it works quite fine. Of course, there are situations where I had to place again the clock on the stand in order to make sure that the connection is a snuggle fit. All right. What else? You have your manual, and that's just about it. I'm pretty sure you can change the wristwatch band, and you can have various sort of materials you could use. This one made of rubber is not bad. It's quite flexible. Unfortunately, it's not overly comfortable. It's the same issue you may have with older watches. If you are fine with using such thickness and such rigidity, it's fine, but other than that, you're not going to feel overly a pleasant fit. And of course, when you're going to tighten it on your hand, there is still going to feel less than elastic. I don't think that the Apple solution is perfect, but I still think that this one leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, you still feel it as your typical heavy classical 90s digital watch, which is not particularly attractive. All right, I think that this covers most of what I thought about when discussing this clock. On the other hand, I had to give it praise for being quite well endowed in the hardware department. Even if it doesn't feel overly fast, the amount of feature it has is certainly good. I think that the only slight issue I have is the fact that it's not configurable as I enjoy. But for a person that really wants to see what a smartwatch is all about and enjoy it for what it does, I think it's great, and I think it's going to be a very good purchase for a person when they just want to have their first watch, or they want to have a true smartwatch since they had some sort of surrogates before. So I think this basically covers most of what I was thinking. It's clear that this watch is not on the level of the Samsung Galaxy watches. Even the model is quite old at this time. But I think that it does the job quite well. Sorry, I have noticed that I have not placed it properly. So overall, I hope you enjoyed the video. If there is something else to add, please do. I think that there are very many things that could be said. Huawei has launched the GT3 model for quite a while. If I can see it properly, just a moment to find this information. To have a rough point of view, perspective on it. Yes, the GT3 was launched in January, probably around January 2022, so not that far. The GT2 launched in July 2021. So, of course, the GT2 Pro, this is not the GT2 Pro. Let me see if I can find when the GT2 range was launched. Let me see, in 2019. Yes, I think that the product release timeline is not bad. 2 years or roughly 3 years is your typical lifetime for such a product. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, I'm not so fond of smartwatches. I have thought about using one. I found this model, and I thought it was interesting, but unfortunately it doesn't quite suit me. There are some advantages in controlling more aspects from your digital life, such as, for instance, controlling your phone remotely. Unfortunately, I have not been quite fond of its weight or the way in which it operates. So these are my only, or these are mostly my main nuisances that I already mentioned. Other than that, yes, I don't think it's a bad watch. If you have a lot of physical activity, I think it suits quite well. It's not overly costly watch. I think it's around 200 something euros or dollars, so it's not or less than 300 to have a rough idea. I think this is what matters. So 250, around that range. It's clear that it has its own disadvantages, but on the other side, as I mentioned, if you are an active person, you want to monitor your health and do so cheaper, it's clearly a better option than the Samsung Galaxy Watch range or the Apple Watch range, and especially if you don't quite have a Samsung device, because the Huawei watch works much easier with a plethora of phones, because the application is offering absolutely the same features. While on the other hand, with an Apple Watch, you cannot use it with something else than an Apple iPhone, an Apple product actually. And the Samsung one, I think it has some features that might be catered more towards Samsung phone users. So not a bad device in itself, but not necessarily for me. I hope you find this video interesting. Please subscribe to the channel. If you have comments, please leave them. Then I hope you will have a pleasant day. Thank you very much.